Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Karen Nance Show. We're doing Focused Fridays, and I'm excited to have my special guest, Asha Wilkerson. She is an attorney by trade. She has her master's in business. She's a coach. She is a world traveler, and she has a lot of information to share about stress and anxiety during the holidays and how to work through that. So, welcome, Asha.
Thank you, Karen. It's great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now in terms of the law and or coaching and or traveling.
Absolutely. So you talked about stress in the holidays, and I can tell you that since I have resigned from law and resigned from teaching full time, that I am a lot less stressful for this incoming holiday season. So I am right now in Portland, Oregon with my mom, spending a couple months with her before I jet set off to Portugal for an indefinite amount of time. And I'm really just
Mm.
looking forward to spending a really relaxing, tranquil holiday season with my friends and family. How about you?
I'm doing the same. I just came back from a trip, so I'm just on relax mode myself. No big plans for shopping, just spending time with family. So, can you tell
Mhm.
us why you decided on leaving the country and how you chose Portugal as your destination?
Yeah. So, two things. I was just talking the other day with some friends of mine who were in the millennial generation, not to be confused with the generation after us, because I feel like everybody after baby boomers gets labeled millennials, and where there's a few differences between us. But I was just talking the other day about how the dream of my parents' generation of the baby boomers was very straightforward about, in my mom's generation, integrating the United States, right? Integrating colleges, getting an education, getting a job that has a great government pension, and then retiring, and like that's it, right? But my generation has been working so hard. We've been following in the same footsteps, but the time is just different. So we've spent so much more money on the same education. It's so much more expensive to buy a house. It feels like it just takes more, especially in the Bay Area, to get to some of these traditional success metrics. And at some point, a lot of us are looking up and going, gosh, we're working so hard and it feels like we're never going to hit this goal, whatever the goal is. And I started thinking about, okay, well, if you don't like the rules to the game, maybe you change the game that you're playing. And a few years ago, this is what also happens in entrepreneurship too. You get to decide what kind of life you want to live, you get to set your priorities. And I had decided that I wanted to live a life that prioritized my health, where I could do something that I really enjoyed and where I would have enough time to travel and just see the world. So I didn't want to work and be stressed to not be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor. But of course, I also want to work and do the things that being able to have a job and money afford you. And I decided that maybe I would start looking outside of the United States, because the gig here, like I know what this game is, and I don't want to play this game for the next 20 years of my life, where I have, a lot of really good years left, and I can take my same skill set and labor to another place. And because the values and the culture are different, I can enjoy my life a little bit more. I can get a little bit more for my money. And I chose Portugal because I fell in love with it back in 2008 before it was on anybody's map. I was studying abroad in the Netherlands in law school and had visited this tiny country and thought, oh, this is gorgeous. It's so clean. The food is tasty. It's just fresh. And it had been on my short list of places to go to. Back in 2016, I was thinking about relocating, ended up not doing it then. And then finally this summer, I went and visited again. And I said, okay, Asha, can you actually do this? Do you actually want to move? Because it's one thing to talk about it, and it's another thing to actually carry it through. And I woke up, I sat straight up in bed one day as I woke up in the morning and I said, yeah, this is it. It was like it just dropped in. This is it. It's time to let go of what you've done. You've proven enough. You've done enough. Now it's time to be here and to live this next chapter of your life.
That's awesome. So obviously they speak Portuguese in Portugal. Do you feel like that's a challenge for you, or do you already have control or some control of the language
Yeah, so
and
I learned
speak
Brazilian Portuguese
Portuguese?
a couple years ago, so I already speak some Portuguese, but I speak Brazilian Portuguese. And when I'm listening to
Okay.
Portuguese in Portugal, it sounds completely different than it does. But I have the basics. So I can definitely communicate and get the basics done. I was talking to a Brazilian guy in Portugal and he said, yeah, when he first got there, he was on the train. He goes, oh wow, this is really cool that these folks are speaking Russian. Then a couple minutes later, he was like, wait a minute, they're speaking Portuguese. And his first was Portuguese, just from a different country. So I still have work to do to get command of Portuguese, but because I speak Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese, I'm okay. I'm doing all right.
Awesome. So are you just letting your law career for temporarily put it on hold, or you just don't want to practice law moving forward?
I think I'm done practicing law. I am really grateful for the foundation that it gave me and for the skill set of being able to research and look up anything that I'm curious about. But as it stands now, I think I'm done practicing law. I'm much more interested in the healing space, in helping women shake the chains of expectations, to stop doing what has always been expected of them and actually to do what they want to do. So I feel like that's a really strong call on my life right now. And it's also the story that I'm living out. So it's personal to me, it's near and dear. And I know that I'm
Wow.
not the only one who's felt that way. So this is the work that I want to do moving forward.
Wow. So your mom is in Portland and you're going to be a long way away from her. How are you going to adjust? How is she going to adjust having you so far away?
Yeah, that's a good question. That was one of the things that I really had to reconcile because I felt like and I'm an only child too. And after my parents split, my
Mhm.
mom never remarried. So it's been just the two of us since I don't know, maybe I
Mhm.
was 15 or 16. But since I was 18, I've lived in California and California is not that far from Portland, Oregon. So it's a quick hour and a half flight from the Bay Area. And I felt like I could get home at any time. But it was definitely something I had to think about as my mom is getting older, as I'm also getting older, as Portugal is much further away. But one day I just had the conversation. I was afraid to have the conversation because I didn't want to disappoint her and I didn't want to, not be a good daughter. There was a part of me that felt like if I'm going to move anywhere, I should move
Mhm.
closer to home, not further away from home. But she told me, she's like, Asha, honey, you have to go live your life. Like, I'm going to be okay. I'm independent. I've built my life. I've lived my life. Now it's time for you to go live yours. So I really appreciate that she said that, even though I'm still planning on coming back, pretty frequently, at least 2 or 3 times a year, and will certainly miss having my mom, a short hour and a half plane ride away. But I think it's also helped with the adjustment that we haven't lived in the same state since I was 18 anyway.
Wow. Well, I think it's very courageous to make that move and to make any move out of a comfort zone of being in California, since you were 16 years old. So
Yeah.
my question is in terms of making money, I know that there are retirees who move abroad and then they have their pension and that works for them. But being a young person moving abroad, do you have any means or connections in terms of how you're going to support yourself? Some people
Yeah.
have savings in other ways, but with the internet, I would think it would be a little bit easier, but, is it gonna
Mhm.
be easier in terms of making connections and making a living abroad?
Yeah. So I have an internet based business. My coaching business is internet based. And even before I stopped practicing law, I had moved my law practice almost 100% online before virtual practices even became a
Mhm.
thing. So I have a few years, about 7, 8 years into the game of online business. So I'm very comfortable doing business online. And to help in the transition, I'm going to be teaching 2 classes
Wow.
adjunct for the school that I just resigned from teaching full time. But Portugal has a digital nomad visa where the person is responsible for creating their own income
Mm.
outside of the country. And so that's a whole other thing about the immigration process that has been big on my mind, because we talk a lot about gentrification in the United States, about how Black people and lower income folks have been pushed out of urban areas, and the only areas that we were even allowed to have homes at some point. And these developers come in, or white people come in and go, oh, I'm going to buy
Mm.
this house, I'm going to change the neighborhood. Me as an immigrant to Portugal and everybody else who moves as an immigrant to Portugal is essentially doing the same thing. So it's an interesting
Mm.
perspective to be on the side of the gentrifier. And as a
Mhm.
wave of people have come in, housing has become really unaffordable for local Portuguese. And I really wrestled with whether or not it was ethically responsible for me to move to a place where my income potential, because I'm making money abroad, is so much higher than what the local economy can pay its native workers, let's say. Um, so my goal is to integrate as much as possible with Portuguese society. If I hire people, to hire people locally, if I'm doing events and
Mhm.
things, to really make a conscious effort to work with local people there, and to not just create this hub of Americans that are living in another place. So I do have my own means and my own sources of providing an income. I'm not legally allowed to work in Portugal because that's not the visa that I applied for unless I was an independent contractor. But on top of that, I made a conscious decision that I don't want to take money out of the country, and I want to be able to think about how I'm contributing economically to the country as well.
Wow, you put a lot of thought, I can tell, into this. And what I'd like to do is take a little break, and when we come back, to see if your coaching does involve helping other people who want to resettle in different areas, or at least make a change in their life that's radically different from what they're doing now. So, have my guests come back, and we'll hear more from Asha in just a moment.
Mafe Management is a company dedicated to empowering individuals and businesses in PR and marketing, social media management, online show and podcast production, business consulting, graphic design, photography and videography, workshops and classes, events management, personality development, logo creation, illustrations, and animation. In working together to turn their dreams into reality. Get one step closer to elevating yourself and your business by contacting hello@mafemanagement.com. Let us empower you.
Well, welcome back. And I'd like to hear more from Asha about how she can assist others in making life-changing transitions. And do you work only with women? That's another question, and only with women of color. So if you can answer those questions, that'd be great.
Yeah, my audience is a little bit broader than just women of color. I will help anybody who wants to receive help from me, but my messaging is specifically targeted towards Black women first and then women of color after that. But if you feel like you resonate with the messaging, I'm more than happy to jump on a call and see if we'd be a good fit for working together. In terms of what I help people do in their life as a life coach, is to really figure out what it is that they want. So I noticed in my own life that I was the kid who had done everything right. I was the kid who knew that as the only Black kid growing up in my neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, I couldn't afford to have a misstep. My mom was also the only Black administrator in the school district, in the same district where I attended school. And so she was well known. She was a middle school principal at the same time that I was in middle school, and I would play basketball against her students and stuff, and softball as well. And she taught me very early on that people saw me before I knew who they were. And so that I didn't feel like it was pressure at the time, but I became very aware of someone who stands out. I'm 6'1". I'm Black. I'm an attorney. I'd be in court and oftentimes be the only Black person in the courtroom or in the deposition. I just grew up with an understanding that someone is always watching. And it wasn't until a couple years ago that I realized, okay, I've done these things. I've gone to law school. I went back to business school. I started teaching. I've done all these things that I wanted to do at the time, but now they don't feel like they're in alignment anymore. And I was having a really hard time letting go of what I thought that I should do to even
Mhm.
try and figure out and explore what I wanted to do. Because in the past, they had pretty much aligned. And then now that they were diverging, I was really having a hard time feeling like I could trust myself, or that I could step out confidently, not worrying about what other people's opinions were. So when I work with folks, I help them figure out what are the expectations that are placed on them by their family, by society, that they've placed on themselves, by their job, by their children, things like that. And what are the expectations that they want to let go of? Because particularly as Black women and just of people of color, we are so over determined, right? Everybody has an opinion on what we do, particularly as women. And so it's important to understand what are the opinions of others that you can give back, and what is the expectation and the opinion of yourself that you want to continue to move forward with. Once you get to the point where you're like, okay, this is what I want to do, I want to let that go, I want to keep this, there's often some healing that has to occur because a lot of these expectations we learned in childhood. And in order to step out confidently and with self trust, we have to go back and heal some of those wounds that we developed that everyone has from childhood.
Mhm.
So that's what I help people do: figure out what it is, let go of the expectations that no longer serve, heal so that then they can take the step in the direction of the life that they want to live.
Wow, it sounds like it's very in terms of steps to take that people can really understand that I'm here, and there are several phases I need to go through or steps I need to go through in order to make these changes that I want to see in my life and for
Mhm.
myself and not for others. So
Right.
when you speak of healing, it makes me want to ask you about the trip that you have planned to Ghana in
Yeah.
September,
Yes.
because that is a healing trip in and of itself. So if you can tell my audience about that, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking about that. So, this will be the second trip that I've led to Ghana, and I've changed it a little bit from last year. This trip in particular is for Black women. So, women in the African diaspora. And it doesn't matter whether you consider yourself half Black or mixed with something else, but if you identify as Black, as a descendant, or having descendants from Africa, you are welcome to come on this trip. And the goal is to rest and reconnect with our ancestors. We get so busy in this life
Mm.
that, we just don't take care of ourselves. We don't allow ourselves to rest. And we've forgotten a lot of the ancestral and traditional wisdom that was passed down or maybe wasn't passed down from the generation before us. So we're going back to African soil to reconcile with some of the stories that we've heard, to find a place of rest, and also just to receive healing from the invitation of the local community, and also from a couple healers that I'm working with as well. So it will include daily mindful movement. We have a yoga instructor who's coming with us, who is, I think it's called Yin Yoga. She practices Yin Yoga, and that's allowing yourself to stay in a particular posture for a longer period of time. And what that does, I have found, is that when you sit there and you get past the initial discomfort or you start to get bored, then the emotions start to come up. You start to wiggle around like, oh, I don't want to be here. I would rather be doing something else, right? And if you can stay there a little bit longer, you'll start to feel some things that you're often too busy to feel when you're moving all the time. We'll also have Reiki healing. I'm getting my Reiki 2 certification this Saturday, and another friend of mine is Reiki certified. She's also intuitive. We'll do meditations. We'll have a naming ceremony, which is really the official welcome back into the community. And we'll visit 2 of the local sites that are there. But instead of being a tour, it's really going to be a time to rest and relax and reconnect with the women that we're with and with our ancestral wisdom.
Wow. So this is another question I have. I'm assuming that some of the people participating may never have traveled out of the country, let alone travel to Africa. And there may be
Mhm.
some type of culture shock that people might experience in addition to unloading and trying to heal. Are there any safeguards in place, or is there any type of pre planning for those people that may not have traveled out of the country, or especially to Africa?
Yeah. So in terms of like logistics, you need a yellow fever shot. But in terms of preparation, we'll make sure that we meet a couple times before we go as a group so that when you get there and see people, you'll recognize them. We will talk a little bit about the culture, and what are some of the differences. But what's really beautiful is that you'll be able to see the traditions that are passed down from African history all the way up to where we are now. So Ghana is actually it's a really safe country. I think it's top 30 safe countries in the world. So a lot safer than being in the United States. So you don't have some of the security issues that you might have in other places. The people are really friendly. I thought it was just kind of a gimmick because Ghana has been saying year of the return for a long time. And I thought it was a gimmick, but somebody said to us when we were at this river called the Last Bath, they said, no, you were your ancestors. Like, oh, that's cute. He said, no, we on African soil kept looking west. We were wondering what was happening. When would they be able to come back? And it has taken hundreds of years, but now Black people in the diaspora are finally coming back. And this was a sentiment that was felt largely by just people in general when I would ask, because I'm always
Sorry about that. I lost a connection. So last I heard, Asha, was you were saying the return, and if you can just catch me up, and then I can proceed. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so Ghana in particular has always welcomed diaspora people home, but I always thought, okay, is this just economic reasons or like do people really want us home? Because the
Mhm.
relationship between Africans and African Americans is a lot of love, but also there's some questioning of each other, right? And
Right.
and sometimes you get told very distinctly like you're not African, you're African American, or you're American, blah blah blah. So I was very curious about how did people feel for us to return. And at one of the sites that we went to, this guy said, "You guys are our ancestors' returns." And I thought, "Oh, that's cute." He's like, "No. We on African soil continued to look west because we didn't know where our ancestors who had been captured were
Mhm.
going. And we continued to look west, awaiting your return. And it
Mhm.
took hundreds of years, but
Mhm.
now you are home. So you are your ancestors returned." And
Wow.
when he said that, it just gave me chills, right? But
Yes.
that's the sentiment that I have found with people in Ghana in general, that they're actually welcoming us home and feel like, yeah, we want you to return and to get to know, even if you didn't come from this country, to get to know our country and the roots that are still present in your culture today.
Wow, that's so beautiful. So, can you share with our audience how to get some more information about your trip, and is there still space available, and
Yeah.
how to reach you to ask any questions they may have?
Absolutely. So the website, go to ashawilkerson.com/Ghana, and you can find all of the trip information there. You can also find me on Instagram, Asha Wilkerson ESQ, and you can send me a message if you have more direct questions about Ghana. There's still space to sign up. The early bird pricing will end December 31st. So make sure if you're interested that you put your deposit down by December 31st to lock in your price. And then you'll have until March to sign up if you don't make the early bird price.
Oh, that's awesome. So thank you so much for sharing. It's been amazing. And I'm going to have you back so that you can share with us your travels and relocation to Portugal and your trip to Ghana. So thank you so much. Any parting words you have for the holidays or just in general for our audience?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me as a guest. And I'll leave your audience with this. The holidays are stressful. Half the time when people are upset and yelling back and forth, it actually has nothing to do with you and everything to do with what's going on inside of them. So, as much as possible, try not to take things personally, but also give yourself space and set your boundaries when you need it.
Thank you so much. And I'll have you back soon. Take care and safe travels, Asha.
Thanks, Karen. You too.
Okay, bye bye.